Let's kind of look at like what trauma means. Because
Yeah.
trauma is there's oftentimes been two categories of trauma. So we think of the big T trauma and the little t trauma. So the big T traumas are like domestic violence, sexual violence, people who have been a victim of crime, veterans. So
Mhm.
those kind of big, horrible situations are typically what people think of when it comes to trauma. Little t traumas are things that don't necessarily fit the criteria, the diagnostic criteria to then give the person like a PTSD diagnosis. So things like
Mhm.
job loss or a bad breakup or chronic stress, which everybody seems to be having right now,
Mhm.
right? So kind of a good analogy is for big T trauma, an example might be someone who lost a child. A little T trauma might be someone who lost a pet.
Right.
And my kind of soapbox is I feel that it's unhelpful to categorize trauma in this way because both types of trauma act on the autonomic nervous system the exact same way. So whether someone has been beaten by their spouse or whether someone lost their job and has been unemployed for an
Mhm.
extended period of time. They're feeling the effects of the trauma the same way internally in their body. So labeling traumas as little t traumas, I feel
Mhm.
invalidates how people experience their trauma.
Right.
And it can often keep people from seeking help because, well, my trauma is not bad enough, right? Which is
Hmm.
ironic because I hear that from people who have big T traumas as well.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
nobody thinks they're like and it's true, you can always look at people who have it
Hmm.
worse, but it's unhelpful and invalidating to trauma and how people experience their trauma because
Hmm.
little t traumas can be just as life changing and
Hmm.
harmful as big T traumas. So it's important
Absolutely.
to keep that in mind when working with people. If someone is experiencing discomfort based
Hmm.
on something that has happened for them, that discomfort doesn't discriminate if it's a big T trauma or a little t trauma.
Right.
So invalidating people's experiences further increases trauma. So, a perfect
Mm.
example, my very first cat, I was very, very, very close with her. She was my soul cat. And when she
Mm.
passed away
Hmm.
unexpectedly, I couldn't go to work for 3 days. I was absolutely grief stricken to the point where
Mm.
I could not function. Now, if someone
Yeah.
had come in and been like, "What's your problem? It's just a cat."
Yeah.
Like now I'm healing from the grief of losing my cat and I'm healing from the invalidation of my relationship to that cat, right?
Right.
And that's a
Hmm.
common thing for people to be like, oh, well, it was just a fender bender, like no one got hurt. But depending on people's mental health history,
Hmm.
stability in childhood, stability in adult life, people may be more prone to normal everyday stressors that someone may just be like, going on about my day. It may affect them to the point of having trauma responses. Like, for instance, COVID. COVID was a big
Hmm.
trauma for a lot of people.
Right.
But because people still had to work, figure out how to educate their children
Hmm.
who are now virtual and at home while they're working from home, and loved ones getting sick, loved ones passing away, the uncertainty
Yeah.
of what COVID was, right?
Hmm.
So all of this stress, but you still had to keep going, right? And
Hmm.
so what we saw is after COVID, I mean, COVID's obviously still a thing, but it's no longer the pandemic that it was now that we have some treatments.
Hmm.
Afterwards, people started to crumble and they've been holding all of this stress to get through. And now that things have kind of, whew, okay, I can go back to work, kids are back in school. Now the trauma starts to come out. And that tends to be
Mm.
really common when people feel safer. They're more
Right.
likely to express that trauma to others.
Hmm. And I think that is what happens in some of our events, especially
Yeah.
in this, like in Cuddle Party, where we're trying to create a safer space and have that
Mm-hmm.
room to have like the emotional release. And so
Yes.
I think that's exactly what happens, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
That's why creating that safety
mhm,
of, before the group gets there and from the cuddle party practitioner themselves, like creating this as a safe space is
mhm.
so important because then it allows not just emotional, but verbal, mental, physical, somatic releases of some of this trauma, which can be healing if treated in a proper way, right?